2026. The S&P 500 is trading at nominal all-time highs. The market cap to GDP ratio sits above 190%. The Federal Reserve classifies this as a soft landing. Simultaneously, real disposable income is down 4% since 2021. Credit card delinquencies have breached 10.9%. Commercial bankruptcies are up 18% year over year. The macro data suggests prosperity. The ledger data suggests insolvency. The official story is a lie. They tell you the crisis is over. They point to gross domestic product. They point to the S&P 500 hitting nominal highs. They call it a soft landing. But you don't live in the GDP. You live in the grocery aisle. You live in the rental market. And in your reality, the math is broken. This is the silent depression. It's not silent because it's subtle. It's silent because the data is manipulated to hide it. Media pundits call it a Vibecession. They say you just feel poor because of TikTok. Here's the hard truth from JP Morgan Chase's internal ledger, tracking 9 million real bank accounts. As of July 2024, real income, what you can actually buy, went negative. For the bottom income quartile, purchasing power rose just 6% in 4 years. That's 1.5% per year. Meanwhile, the cost of survival surged. Prices are 25% higher than they were in 2020. You aren't imagining it, you are being gaslit by a spreadsheet. GDP measures activity. If a hurricane destroys a city and the government spends billions to rebuild it, GDP goes up. The economy grew, but the people lost everything. That is the American economy in 2026. Growth fueled by debt. Prosperity fueled by inflation. The Bureau of Economic Analysis reports numbers that look green, but your bank balance bleeds red. This isn't a recovery, it is a looting. To a printing press churning out sheets of uncut $100 bills. Let's identify the crime. This wasn't an accident, it was a transfer. Between 2020 and 2026, we witnessed the largest upward redistribution of wealth in human history. The mechanism was simple. The Federal Reserve printed trillions. That money did not go to you. It went to assets. It went to the people who owned the assets. In 2024 alone, global billionaire wealth surged by $2 trillion. That is $5.7 billion every single day. While you clipped coupons for eggs, the ultra-wealthy accumulated the GDP of a small nation every 24 hours. The top 1% now holds 30.8% of all United States wealth. That is an all-time high. Look at the bottom 50%, 165 million Americans. They hold just 2.8%. Half the country owns effectively nothing. Inflation is not a natural disaster. Inflation is a policy. When the Fed buys bonds, they force investors into riskier assets, stocks, real estate. This bids up the price. If you own the asset, you get rich. If you rent the asset, you get crushed. Elon Musk's wealth went from $24.6 billion in 2020 to $714 billion in 2026. That is a 30-fold increase. Did he work 30 times harder? No. The currency was debased. The asset bubble inflated. Your paycheck stayed the same. The gap between the economy and your life is the theft. But the loot is running out. The system is straining. To understand the endgame, we have to look across the Pacific to a country that died 30 years ago and is still walking around. We are not just facing a recession, we are facing Japanification, and unlike Japan, we don't have the savings to survive it. To see your future, you must look to the past, specifically 1989, Japan. The Imperial Palace in Tokyo was worth more than all the real estate in California. Then the math broke. The bubble burst. The stock market crashed. Japan entered the lost decade. 30 years of economic purgatory. The structural anomaly prevents the correction. The Bank of Japan intervened to halt asset liquidation. They expanded the monetary base to absorb insolvent assets. As of 2026, the Bank of Japan's balance sheet exceeds 127% of GDP. They effectively nationalized the equity market. The Federal Reserve is replicating this specific liquidity mechanism. The U.S. Federal Reserve has followed the Japanese playbook step for step. Zero interest rate policy, Quantitative easing. The Fed's balance sheet sits at roughly 21% of U.S. GDP. That sounds low compared to Japan, but it's a loaded gun pointed at the dollar. We are addicted to cheap money, and when the addiction sets in, you get a specific disease. Economist Richard Koo calls it a balance sheet recession. In a normal economy, companies borrow to grow. In a balance sheet recession, companies are so terrified of debt, they stop spending. They hoard cash. Look at Berkshire Hathaway. Warren Buffett isn't buying the dip. He is holding a record $334 billion in cash. Why? Because in a zombie economy, cash is the only thing that doesn't die. We are engaging in the Japanification of America, stagnation, low growth, but with one fatal difference. Japan is a nation of savers. America is a nation of debtors. When they print, they survive. When we print, we drown. If the central bank provides the fuel, Wall Street provides the engine. The American dream was built on a simple contract. Work hard, buy a home, retire on the equity. That contract has been shredded. Institutional capital has declared war on homeownership. They tell you the corporate landlord is a myth. They say they only own a small percentage. That is a statistical lie. They don't buy random farms in Nebraska. They target the jugular. High-growth neighborhoods, starter homes. In 2025, investors accounted for 30% of all single-family home purchases. 1 in 3 homes, gone, snapped up with all cash offers that you cannot compete with. The result is a new class system. The rent-to-income ratio is the shackle. In Miami, the median renter surrenders 37.9% of their income just to have a roof. In New York, it's 37.1%. In Kahului, Hawaii, it's 45.5%. You are not living, you are subscribing to shelter. In San Jose, the price-to-rent ratio is 37.6. Historically, anything over 20 is a bubble. 37 is not a bubble, it is a blockade. It means buying is mathematically impossible for the working class, so you are forced to rent. And who do you rent from? The same institutions that outbid you. They're building entire subdivisions now, build-to-rent communities. 200 homes, 0 owners. A permanent fiefdom where you pay off their mortgage forever. This is the ultimate financialization of human necessity. They have turned your home into their bond, and unlike a bond, you have to paint the walls yourself. While Wall Street buys your neighborhood, they're hiding a cancer in their own backyard. It's called the zombie economy. Capitalism has a basic rule. If a company fails to make money, it dies. Its resources go to someone better. But for 15 years, the Fed turned off the mechanism of failure. They made debt free. And when debt is free, the incompetent survive. As of November 2025, there are 639 zombie companies in the Russell 3000 index. These are not small mom-and-pop shops. These are major corporations that earn less money than they owe in interest. They are the walking dead, and the infection is spreading. In October 2025 alone, 83 new companies joined the horde. Collectively, these zombies sit on over $1 trillion in debt. This is the maturity wall. They borrowed that $1 trillion when interest rates were near zero. Now they have to refinance at 5% or 7%. They can't, so the Fed has a gun to its head. If they keep rates high to fight inflation, the zombies die. Mass layoffs, market crash, the hard reset. If they cut rates to save the zombies, inflation explodes again. They are trapped, and while they decide which poison to pick, you are the one paying the bill. Let's talk about your personal CPI. The government tells you inflation is cooling. They say it's only 2.7%. This is a statistical trick. They are measuring the speed of the car, not how far you've driven off the cliff. Prices didn't go down, they just stopped going up as fast. But the damage is permanent. Since 2020, the price of eggs is up 86.5%. Beef is up 48%. Car insurance is up 56%. You are working the same hours, but your money is dying. And to keep the lights on, Americans are doing the only thing they have left. They are charging it. The credit card is the new breadline, but the limit has been reached. As of 2025, credit card delinquency rates, people who are 90 days behind, have hit 10.93%. That is the highest level since 2012. We are back to the disaster levels of the Great Recession, but this time unemployment is allegedly low. Think about that. People have jobs and they still can't pay their bills. The working class isn't breaking, it is broken. So how does this end? There are only 2 paths. Path 1, the hard reset. The Fed lets the 639 zombies fail. Stocks crash, housing falls 30%. It would be painful, brutal, but it would clear the rot. It would make homes affordable again. But the politicians won't let that happen. They fear the crash more than they fear your poverty. So they will choose path 2, the silent depression. They will print the money to save the zombies. They will bail out the banks. They will choose inflationary stagnation. The stock market will stay up in nominal terms. The GDP will look green, but your standard of living will quietly, slowly suffocate. You will own nothing, you will rent everything, and you will be told every single day that the economy is stronger than ever. The American dream wasn't stolen, it was repriced, and you can no longer afford it.